What is going on, Rivian fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today was one wild ride. I want to go over some of the data points, what's floating around, and of course they did have their Q2 earnings, so that's what the market's trying to digest right now to put a appropriate valuation on it. So I want to go over some of the highlights and as well just how low potentially could Rivian go. So I'm going to go over all that, but first make sure you guys hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with that, let's get right to it. So today it did close 9.88% in the red. After hours is continuing that, so 1.52% after hours. A lot of volume though, so 53 million shares being traded, 47 is the average. And of course, when it came down to the Q2 earnings, they surprisingly did beat on both their revenue and earnings per share. As well, they did state that they have sufficient amount of demand clearly well into 2024, so that is massive. That is what they were very confident in saying in the Q1 earnings as well. But more surprisingly, out of left field, they did raise their target by, I think it's only 2,000 vehicles, so still not clearly what analysts originally wanted for 2023, but at least it's moving in the right direction. But when it comes down to Rivian, it's been still plagued with their burning of cash. And I think that's one thing that actually caused it to go down to almost $12, $13 is just how much cash they're physically burning through every single quarter. So once again, I think that is now what is on a lot of people's minds. And with a lot of this data, they're starting to plug it in and look at a lot of the metrics to see, is Rivian overvalued or is it undervalued? So a lot of people are trying to digest that. And based on, for instance, the PS ratio of the Q2 earnings, their future is 4% or 4x, and 7.8x is their current. And that is kind of high. Just to put it in perspective, both Lucid, I think, does have, I think it's around 6 if I know, based on their last earnings. And then when it comes down to Tesla, I think they're at like 2, something like that. So Rivian in comparison is rather high. As well, looking at their book value, that has gone up massive. So that is 4. So once again, I think on all their fronts, Rivian is considered overbought and just too high. So I think in reality, this is what the market is trying to digest and why it's going down very, very much. So when it comes down to some of the data, so based on the options activity, there has been $29 million in calls being purchased today versus 19 million in puts. So based on this, people are anticipating for it to continue to trend up. If you are optimistic and bullish, this shows all the call options, all the strike prices, expiry dates. Based on this, it is anticipated to go between the $23.50 and $25 range by next week. But of course, as I always say, all of this options activity is just more so as a sentiment, and it doesn't necessarily move the stock price. So even if there was $2 billion worth of calls being purchased, in theory, it does not move the stock price 1 cent. So once again, just be aware of that. As far as transactions that did occur on both the secondary market and the dark pool, it was very popular. So these are all the transactions that did occur on the secondary market over $100,000. I know this might be a little bit more daunting to see, so if you guys are ever looking for this information, just feel free to pop it in the comments, or I can even post it on Twitter, StockTwits, wherever else, and I can post a lot of this information so you guys can see. But regardless, at the beginning part of the day, there was a lot of buying. Near the tail end, it kind of transitioned to a little bit more selling, maybe because of fears about CPI data that is coming out tomorrow. But regardless, a lot of big money was buying the dip first thing. And as far as dark pool, there was almost 400 different transactions today over $100,000. So very, very popular today. But some people do not like the dark pool because it is linked to shorting. So I'll give you guys a quick overview of that. So today they did increase 617,000 shares. 13.34% of the free float is being shorted. 81.81 million shares overall are being shorted, and cost to borrow average is 0.74%. So interpreting this data, shorts increasing their position on a red day, it goes to show that they are anticipating for it to go down a little bit more. Even though 618,000 shares isn't much, it's kind of a drop in the bucket comparison to what is truly being shorted, but still, that's how I interpret this data. And as far as, like I mentioned, a lot of the multiples being fairly high based on the Q2 earnings, it's just causing it to sell off. So once again, just on a side note, was there any highlights? Unfortunately, I had a prior arrangement, so I couldn't actually listen to the Rivian earnings. Kind of sad because I really loved their Q1 earnings. But what was some of your highlights from the Q2 earnings that stood out to you? And was there anything that potentially I did miss out on that was a very good catalyst potentially? But like I said, I think based on my analysis of this, they are still burning through a ton of money. So when it comes down to what is coming next, so with it being at $22.35, it is currently between this S1 and the pivot. So $20.50. So based on this sell-off, I do feel that this is going to get bought up very fast. So might actually have a little bit more of a rally to around the $23 mark, and then potentially this is where I do see the dip. I don't see, based on the Q2 earnings, it really being justified to be above this $23 range as of right now. So I do feel that a sell-off to around this $20 mark is kind of expected, and most likely will cause a lot of the technicals to kind of reset as well, because based on the technicals, they did transition from the higher to the lower percentile of the Bollinger Band, still above a lot of the pivotal moving averages, but still based on everything and the earnings, it's kind of justifying, and the trend is on track to trend down as of right now. So once again, I do feel that $20 is going to be the next point. At that stage, a lot of people are going to be interpreting, for instance, the CPI data that just came out, and I believe as well on Friday there is PCE, if I remember correctly. So I do feel that those two data points might dictate exactly where things go, such as Rivian, and based on the Q2 earnings, it actually might be able to break below that. So as far as the low, I do feel that around the $20 mark might be at least a short-term low, but I do feel that the next time a good buying opportunity for Rivian would be anything below this range. So anywhere between this S3 and the S2, so anything below the $18 mark, in my own opinion, who isn't a financial advisor, I feel like that would be the best time to buy. The best bang for your buck, and based on those dollar values, we'll kind of put a lot of these metrics at a kind of adjusted fair value for that. But once again, that's just my own interpretation based on that. When it comes down to this, so looking at the momentum indicator, shows number of retail investors were getting out today. Stochastic is currently at 26. There is a little bit more of a bearish sentiment as well, so once again, just be aware of that. So let me know you guys' thoughts on Rivian, and give yourself a shout out if you have been buying today, selling. What was your kind of viewpoint on all of that? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And take advantage of free promos, and that is with Moomoo. Link in the description below and also the comments. Completely free to sign up for an account, but if you do throw $100 at it, you get 5 free stocks. Each stock is valued up to $2,000, and you also get a $50 cash reward. So while Rivian does figure itself out, take advantage of free promos like this. So with that said, I appreciate you guys watching, and let's eventually make a lot of money on Rivian.